Let's call the October 2nd regular meeting of the zoning commission to order. We are missing Diane and Donna, two Ds.
Yep.
So we've got two alternates here, so we'll appoint two alternates. And first order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 18th. Any comments on it? Corrections? And I see you get highlighted.
I highlighted, but no, I have nothing to say. This was just all the comments on the mobile food truck.
Okay. And Bruce?
I had just one thing I wanted to raise, I probably should wait. In the minutes, there's a reference to the text amendment that was discussed relative to retail cannabis and that strategy. And I had a sort of a comment on the content of our thinking around that. I was wondering if the topic is coming back as we sort of finalize the text.
We voted to ask town staff to advertise for a public hearing on that text.
On the basis of the text that we had in the my comment is just, I think eventually we need to address whether we count a hybrid retailer and a regular retailer. Can you have one of each, or can you have one and not the other? That may come up, and
I understand the question.
it's not very complex of things, it's not the biggest issue. Okay, otherwise I was fine with the minutes.
Motion. And a motion to accept the minutes?
Move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Second. All right, Ann, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstain?
That's me. I wasn't seated.
5-0. Jackie is not seated. Okay, next order of business, we have three public hearings tonight. And I would say that what we should do is have the public hearing, close the public hearing, then move to consider it, and then move on to the next one so that people can move. Don't have to wait through everything to hear theirs. So the first application, Mr. Brass, Mr. Secretary, could you read the application, first one?
Application ZC number 23-32 of Todd and Andrea Rick, owners Terry Hahn, LADA PC applicant for a special exception pursuant to section 6.3 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for a plus or minus 321 square foot addition and a plus or minus 355 square foot deck in the floodplain on the property located at 4 Victoria Lane, assessors map C08 lot 212 lot 013 zone R40.
Thank you. Okay, you want to present what you want to do and what the special exception is?
Good evening, Terry Ann Hahn, Principal, LADA PC Land Planners, 104 West Street, Simsbury, Connecticut. The application is for 4 Victoria Lane. It's a single family home. It's zoned R40. The property is 1.417 acres in size, and it abuts the Simsbury Land Trust land to the west or the left of this drawing. Simsbury Land Trust in the town, Simsbury owned many parcels to the left or west of this property that create a fairly large wetland, of which you can see in the kind of, I'm not really sure what color you perceive it to be, but let's call it the first colored line, that one is the wetland limit on this property. The house is completely within the upland review area, and we have gone to wetlands for their approvals for the installation of a addition to the house. in the back of the house, there's an existing kitchen. This was built in 1965. It's a 1965 kitchen, okay? So the idea was to expand the kitchen, get a little bit better, longer use out of it. And in doing so, it would occupy the land that is currently has a deck at the back of the property. And then what they wanted to do was then add the deck further to the south or down at the bottom of this property, and that would all be within the upland review area. As I said, it would be a pretty straightforward wetland application, and we went through wetlands, everything was fine, they gave us an approval. Except for on the right-hand side, you can see the blue line, which is the flood limit. This property is within the floodplain, and so that's why we need to come to you for a special permit in order to do work in the floodplain. In order to do work in the floodplain, there's a fairly elaborate process to go through to determine whether or not you can do so under the FEMA regulations and within your own floodplain regulations. So the question has to do with do we know what the base flood elevation is? And we do at this location, it's at elevation 298. Do we know if the addition is going to be above the 298 contour? And in fact, because it's at the upper level of this split level house, we know what that elevation is, and we are substantially above that 298 contour. And then you have to look at whether or not the proposed addition and any work that has happened on the property exceed what they call a 50% value of the overall house. And that has to do with FEMA regulations that say basically if you do anything to a property within the flood zone that exceeds 50% of the value, you have to take that whole house and make it comply with the floodplain regulations. So we are able to show that we are less than 50% value, and so therefore the addition and the deck, which are all above the floodplain elevation, can be completed, can actually be built. Could I go to the next slide? Alright, so this is the survey, so you can see where the existing deck in the back is and the elevation. Let's go to the next one. So what we're talking about is an addition which is basically up on piers. So similar to the way that the deck is up on piers, the addition itself will also be up in piers with all of the mechanicals tucked in underneath so that the bottom of the building, where the piers start to go down, all of that has to be outside, substantially outside of the elevation that is the flood limit. And in order to do this, anything that you construct within the zone between the ground and the flood limit, or that 298 contour, if you're doing any kind of fill or putting anything in there, you have to do what's known as compensatory storage calculations. So we had to go through and calculate the volume of essentially air, or what would be water, for each of the posts, the stairs, anything that was being constructed within that volume that is the flood zone, and to be able to show what we're doing to get rid of or to do compensatory storage reduction someplace else. Hey, can we go to the photographs? Probably easiest to see here.
I see how to blow these up. Oh, there we go. Keep talking.
Okay, so that's the existing back of the house. You can see the existing deck. So that you've got the kitchen up at the upper level. There is a garage at the lower level, and that garage is within the flood zone. And that is true. We're not proposing to change that. We go to the next one. What we're proposing is that we're gonna put the deck in the same place, or we'll put the addition in the same place as the existing deck, and then pull a new deck towards us in this photo along the south side of the building. Keep going. So you would see the new addition where the deck is, and then the new deck at the back of the building. Next one has the, okay, so in order to, we calculated what all that volume is, and it's approximately 15 cubic feet, which is, I calculated this because the property owners who are here, Todd and Andrea, wanted to know how much that actually is. It's 25 5-gallon buckets. Okay, just so you understand what that calculation means, okay? So that they're going to need to take out an area that is more than 25 5-gallon buckets, regrade it so that if the flood ever were to come up, we now find a place for what was the equivalent of those posts elsewhere on the property. And that pretty much covers, so at this point, we were able to show that we meet the section 6 requirements and have provided testimony and documents accordingly, and hope that you will approve the special permit.
Thank you. Questions by the commissioners?
I wasn't, when I saw this, I wasn't clear what happens. This can't be a large empty tank, is it, for 25 gallons?
No, there's no tanks. So right now, there's a little bit of a hill, so we're gonna cut in the hill, take the soil out, get rid of it. That's just the area where that's gonna happen, then it'll be regrassed.
So how deep is it at the?
It's about 2 feet deep that we're gonna take it out, and then you regrade it so that, yeah, it's, there's a cross section someplace on one of the drawings.
Think of it as a cut little swale.
Yeah,
That would be able to take that
Okay, I
volume
got it.
displaced.
Yeah.
A swale is created, it's not really a rectangle.
well, it's not really a swale, it's just, right now it comes down, we're gonna steepen up one side and dig out a hole. Flatten it up on the other side.
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Anyone else have commissions? Yeah, commissioners have questions?
Makes sense, you went through wetlands already,
Yes,
everything's approved.
yes. And the town engineer reminded us that we will need a health district approval for the deck and the addition, which is standard for construction, but we actually have received that already, so we are in order.
Good.
What did they say?
They just signed it.
No changes, because
No,
you're not adding any
because
bedrooms or anything.
we're the appropriate distances away from the septic, the issues are the septic tank and the septic system. And we were able to show what our distances were, and they were within their minimum, greater than their minimum requirements.
So their same signature indicates that they.
Yes,
it's
approved.
all-
How old is the septic system?
The septic system was recently repaired and expanded. I can get you that exact,
I'm just curious.
2014.
So there's no need to do any work with respect to septic?
No, and most importantly, the reason why it would trigger a repair in the septic, unless it was failing, but more importantly, if you were adding a bedroom, and that is not the case here. What we're just doing is expanding the kitchen.
Anyone in the public care to speak to this application? I don't hear anybody. I don't see anybody. Okay, do the commissioners have any more questions? Let's close this. Let's vote to close it.
I just thank Terry for the presentation.
Yes,
So I'll move that we close the public hearing on
Second.
application 2332.
second by Tony, motion by Bruce. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Passes 6-0. Okay, now let's move to consider this application for special exception. Does the staff have anything to say about it?
No, Terry did a good job of explaining it. The only thing I would just remind you is anytime there's construction in the floodplain or in the flood zone, it requires a special exception. So that's, decks and all these kinds of things, that's why it comes to you. And then, yes, when the applicant submits their information for an application like this, we send it to the town engineer's office for review, and there are no outstanding issues.
Good.
And you have a draft motions. I also put it on the screen so everybody can see.
Someone wanna make a motion?
Want me to?
Dan? Yeah,
Sure. Alright, I move that the zoning commission approve application number 2332 of Terry Han of LADA PC applicant on behalf of the homeowners Todd and Andrea Burke for a special exemption pursuant to section 6 floodplain zone of the Simsbury zoning regulations to build an approximately 321 square foot addition and an approximately 349 square foot deck on the property at 4 Victoria Lane, Simsbury, Connecticut, 06092. Assessors map C08, block 212, lot 013, zone R40. The special exemption criteria found on section 12 of the town of Simsbury zoning regulations have been substantially met and satisfied. These considerations include, should I read them all?
Sure.
Okay, orderly development. The proposed residential improvements meet the requirements of the residential zone and therefore constitutes orderly development. A building and administrative zoning compliance permit are required prior to the start of the project. Property values. The proposed improvements have no known negative impacts on property values. Public safety. The proposed improvements have no known impacts on public safety. Landscaping and buffers. No landscaping and or buffers are required for this application.
You skip traffic considerations.
Traffic considerations. There are no traffic concerns or considerations with this application. And relationships to utility systems, drainage systems, and impact on community facilities. There is no expected impact on these systems/facilities and subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the project shall be developed in substantial conformance with the plan set dated August 14th, 2023, prepared by LADA PC, Russo Surveyors and Engineers, and Blue Moon Collaborative.
Second.
Second by Jackie. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Now the fun starts.
Done what we did.
Yes.
Next one, Mr.
Would you be able to just
Yes, go ahead. Excuse me?
Mr. Chair, is it possible when we have these draft motions to just say we approved it as written in the draft motion? Is it, do we have to read them out fully?
No,
Okay. I
I
was
was
just curious.
curious.
Okay, no, I understand, just curious.
I would just point out, there have been a couple of occasions where there have been typos.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's.
Doesn't hurt,
We
but-
should read them just to.
No, I just didn't know if it was a rule or not, thank you.
No, it's not a rule. Can you,
Next one, application ZC number 23-24, Christopher Lippett, owner, welcome home improvement applicant for a special exception pursuant to section 6.3 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for an approximately 132 square foot expansion to the existing deck in the floodplain on the property located at 48 Old Mill Court, Assessors map G10 block 148 lot 039 zone RD.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant was unable to be here tonight, and they have not completed their wetlands application, so we would recommend you open the public hearing and just continue it to your October 16th meeting.
Okay. Can you have a motion to continue the public hearing till October 16th?
I'll move that we continue the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 6-0. Public hearing is continued to our next meeting,
Let's just say what day,
October 16th.
16th.
at 7 p.m.
Okay, application, go ahead.
Okay, application ZC number 23-35 of Dan Lee, owner applicant for a special exception pursuant to section 4.5 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for the addition of a dog kennel use to the existing dog training facility use of the property located at 534 Hop Meadow Street, aka 530 Hop Meadow Street, Assessors map G12 block 132 lot 026, Zone B-2.
Okay, is there someone here to speak to this? Yes. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Dan Lee. Thank you for having me here. The address of the facility is 534 Hot Meadow Street. So basically, the facility is 2,000 square feet. It takes up 2 bays. And what we're looking at doing is setting up a play group for doggies and for dogs and puppies. So the play groups are going to be about limited to a small number and amount, and roughly my play groups are Mondays for the puppies and Wednesdays from 9 to 3, Tuesdays and Thursdays for the adult dogs from 10 to 4, and Fridays from 8:30 to 2:30. There will be no dogs kenneled ever overnight. I will have 4 staff on hand for Monday through Thursday play groups, and my Friday play groups, like I said, it's limited to 10, so there will be about 2 staff on hand for the Friday play group. We try to make the play group be a lot more structured, and that's why I have the amount of staff that I do for the play group for these days. Just want to make sure that we have as much structure in the play group as possible, and to make sure that if we're doing any training that we can maximize the staff to the dogs that we have in there. Let's see here. I think that the layout kind of shows you where we're going to be based at, towards the back of the complex there. And I think that's pretty much the bulk of the information that I have to present, and so I leave it up to the board to have any questions.
Questions?
Well, I'm trying to picture the inside of the facility. The whole thing is indoors.
So I do have the indoor, I have a 800 square foot artificial turf enclosure in the back of the second bay of the facility. So the facility, each one is about 1,000 square feet. I do have a barn door that separates the first facility from the second facility. So if we need to close off one bay due to certain dogs in there, we have the ability to do so.
Under normal operations, your dogs are indoors.
Yes, that's correct.
I was taken aback a little bit because of the proximity to the homes over on, I forget the name of the street, the next street over from on the corner where the gas station is. There's
Hazel
Meadow, Hazel Meadow goes back there, that they back up to, fairly close distance to the building. The building is not the one that's proximal to their,
But we're right off of
it's the next one
the
down.
trail.
Yeah. They put the
So-
trail.
But there's,
Yeah.
to the south,
Yeah,
there's a fair amount of space before you get to the Hazel Meadow complex.
and there's the gym, Big Sky
There's
is
a
there
gym.
before
Yeah.
Hazel Meadow.
I mean, this is, well, okay.
So this is all a commercial
dogs-
area.
The dogs are indoors.
Yes.
And I was gonna look it up, George, but really, it slipped my mind. The existing statute, or, our zoning regulation on this property specifically precludes overnight boarding.
No, I don't believe it does.
So if we grant the application as it was submitted, we're gonna authorize overnight boarding.
Yeah, we would recommend it that if you don't want to have overnight boarding, I would recommend a condition that prohibits that.
Would you find that acceptable, Mr. Lee?
Yes, because I've never planned on having overnight boarding at the facility at all. So yes,
Well, we have to talk about, the decibel
Yes.
limits and all that kind of stuff, so
absolutely.
it's easier not to.
So you don't anticipate at any time letting the dogs outdoors?
If they are out of the facility, they'll be in the enclosure in the back. And if they are let out of the facility at any point in time, they're always going to be on a leash.
It's the enclosure, but the enclosure outdoors is not covered, right?
I do have an awning
I'm just wondering about the point Commissioner Elliott raised about noise in the area. If they're out, assuming at some point they go outdoors, would there be a noise concern?
But they're with a person.
They're with a person, correct?
So they're not playing out there, all the
And they're
dogs
not
are, yeah,
loose,
Correct.
that's what you were saying, they're all
Correct,
leashed
exactly.
Yeah.
and with a trainer.
Just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's nothing, no residential things right around there.
No.
I mean, you can
It's all
probably hear a
commercial.
block,
It's just
dog bark a half a block
Big sky
away.
and
Right.
Anyway, it's not overnight and they're not unattended outdoors.
Is there another kennel business there before you?
No, there was not.
How long have you been?
In that facility, a little bit over 4 years, going on 5.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the commissioners?
Just a comment, Dan has an excellent reputation as a dog trainer in town. He's very well regarded, so.
Good. Does anyone in the public care to speak to this application? Okay. I think we could close the public hearing. May I have a motion?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Did you get that? Made the motion and, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a draft motion. Does somebody want to make a draft motion?
you want me to do it again?
Sure, you're experienced.
Okay. So moved, I move the zoning commission approves application number 2330. Oh, I'm on the wrong one.
I think it was a shared one.
Wait a minute, here we are, I'm sorry, I didn't turn the page. My apologies. Moved that the zoning commission approves application ZC number 23-35 of Dan Lee, applicant for special exception pursuant to section 4 of the Simsbury zoning regulations to allow for commercial kennel use at 534 Hot Meadow Street, aka 530 Hot Meadow Street, Simsbury, Connecticut, 06092. Assessors map G12, block 132, lot 026, zone B2, based on the following findings. The special exception criteria found section 12 of the town of Simsbury zoning regulations have been substantially met or satisfied. Those considerations include orderly development. The kennel use is a permitted use in the B2 zone and therefore constitutes orderly development. A building permit and or zoning compliance permit are required as needed. Property values. The proposed use is permitted and is not expected to have a negative impact on property values. Public safety. The proposed use is not expected to have a negative impact on public safety. Traffic considerations. There is sufficient parking on site to accommodate the proposed use. Landscape and buffers. No landscaping and or buffers are required for this application. And lastly, relationship to utility systems, drainage systems, and impact on community facilities. There are no expected impacts on these systems or facilities.
I'll second
Thank you.
this.
Second by Jackie. Did I hear you say a zip code of 06092?
Should be 06070.
Yes.
It sure should.
What did I say?
Did
I say 92?
Anne's making things up.
Okay,
That's called rote memory, that's my zip code.
mine too, that's why I
That's true.
caught it.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been
And-
made and seconded, all in favor?
Did you wanna add that condition
Oh,
for the?
sorry.
We have some discussion?
Yeah, we have discussion, but we also wanna add to the motion that there'll be no overnight
Thank you.
Wording.
boarding of dogs. Is that okay with the seconder?
That's okay.
Okay, so now it says no overnight. Okay. Thank you.
4 people, right?
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carry 6-0. Thank you very much. been there for 4 years.
You never know who the next kennel operator is.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Okay, general commission business. The town hall parking lot improvements that we approved the site plan a while ago, a year and a half or so ago. The town is making some small changes and would like to make us aware of them.
Good evening, for the record, Adam Kessler, licensed professional engineer in the state and deputy town engineer here in Simsbury. Thank you for the time tonight. This is hopefully a quick update on our plans for the town hall site. The history of kind of where we are right now is that we went out to bid in 2021 and 2023, and each time the bids exceeded the funds available. This last time, for the entire site, the total came to about $1.4 million. We felt that was kind of a little crazy to do for this site. So we took a look at, where the money was gonna be spent, where the big dollar items that maybe we could do without. Through an effort of value engineering, we ended up redesigning the project, which really ended up being just minor improvements to the existing site as it is today. We'll improve both driveways where they're located now with some curb improvements. We'll widen the southern driveway on the PD side to 26 feet, so it's a little bit more comfortable. We won't relocate the main driveway in the center of the site to the north. We've adjusted the alignment of this middle drive to, instead of having a pinch point as you approach the building, it kind of directs everybody to the main area of parking. We felt it's much more comfortable alignment for people entering the site. We extended the parking in front of the building, the 90-degree parking that was proposed previously. We extended that a little bit to add a few more spaces. And then we made some minor revisions to the internal sidewalks throughout the site. The design elements that remain unchanged, which was really important for us when we went through this effort, was that the sidewalk improvements along the frontage of our property remained in the project. Eliminating the 2 existing crosswalks and adding 1 crosswalk, mid-block crossing, with the rapid beacon flashers that you see at some of our trail crossings now. That will be installed as well.
Yeah.
Throughout the site, we're gonna improve the lighting, as we know, especially as we enter fall, it's a little dark out there. Improve accessibility and improve the stormwater management through infiltration, which is again an element of the original approval that we wanted to maintain. All in all, we ended up adding 4 parking spaces, which I think is gonna be a benefit to the center of town here. The approved plan actually reduced that number down to 151, and now we'll have 160, so about 4 more than exist today. In an effort to further reduce the cost of the project, we're gonna GC the job ourselves, with DPW performing some of the work, self-performing on Saturdays. You'll probably see them over the next several Saturdays out here doing some of the tree work that's necessary, some of the drainage, and then we'll also have them do a lot of the conduit work, the trenching, for all the lighting that'll come later. Part of our reason for being here is because we found out, over the last couple of weeks that the contractor that we had do the sidewalk north of the site this summer has availability in their schedule. And over the last, basically since COVID in 2020, we've had a hard time finding good contractors, and we figured we'd schedule them for later this month to do that sidewalk work. Of course, that ends up meaning we have to do some curb work, and then we have to do some drainage work. So hence why DPW is gonna be starting this Saturday on some of that work. We hope to have a contractor doing the granite curb at the entries, and probably next week, I think. And our intent is to take care of the frontage this fall, because that is the most important, safety element of this project. Bring our granite curb into a logical location so it kind of matches in with our existing site. And if we have favorable weather and available contractors, perhaps we take on some of the granite islands in the parking lot and try to do this as minimally invasive to day-to-day operations as possible here through the fall. The bulk of the work will happen next spring. We hope to kind of get all the conduit runs out of the way this fall, and then look to really hit the ground running in the spring. All in all, our main goal here is to increase the safety of our frontage, certainly maintain parking count on this property, and improve accessibility. I think this new plan does all that. In terms of abandoning the plan to move the north driveway or the driveway to the north, which is kind of highlighted in blue. That highlight in blue shows you the change in the pavement that was approved versus what we're gonna try to do now. This change we discussed at our LTA group, the local traffic authority group, that meets on a monthly basis to kind of discuss the pluses and minuses of keeping the driveway where it is. And quite honestly, I can't come up with a compelling reason why one location is any safer than the other. There are certainly benefits to keeping it where it is today because everyone's used to it. And moving it to the north, has its own potential conflicts because of all the curb cuts that exist in this area. That about sums up our, kind of changes to the plan, which, as you can see, is kind of just minor changes to the existing site. And all in all, we hope to not spend as much money as it bid out and save the town some funds.
When do you think the crosswalk will be done?
So
That's state?
that, we already have that approved through the state. And that one, as part of the sidewalk work, when they start at the end of this month, will include all the improvements associated with that. The one thing we might end up having to wait on is the actual flashing beacon. Surprisingly, those are, we've heard anywhere from 4 to 14 or 15 weeks out, as well as availability to install it. So our thinking now is, we get all the improvements done, and if that's the only thing we have to wait for, we can put additional signage out. We could do a message sign out there for the interim period. And I think there's methods to kind of overcome that gap between when it's done and when it's not.
I think that's gonna be a huge safety feature, so.
We agree.
Could you just comment on three things? I'm curious, the bricks out here, the brick sidewalk that's gonna be replaced. That's gonna be a concrete sidewalk, I presume, because that's what they're doing in the north part of Simsbury.
Correct. So we are, the approved plan showed basically the center of the walkway would be concrete and then bordered with brick to create that 5-foot walkway.
So it's like a soldier course kind
Yeah,
of?
soldier course along either side. That's what they did just north of our property here, up to Masako recently. And we'll carry that same treatment down.
You gonna reuse those bricks?
We what's funny is actually the particular blend we use downtown and have used elsewhere. I think the lead time on that was, the last time we checked a few months ago, was 50 to 75 weeks. Which you're never gonna get a contractor to order those. So the brick band's actually working out in our favor in that way. We will reuse, there's a brick walk from the seating area out there up to the building. We're gonna reuse those bricks as we kind of reconfigure the walkways out to that area to the furthest extent possible. But yeah, we'll continue that same treatment with the center sidewalk.
How about the electric vehicle charging stations? Are you gonna add some to that? Or?
So the one that exists today is gonna stay in its location now. Through our trenching for the conduit and whatnot, we are going to add a few extras in there for the future build out. I don't believe there are any
You're adding
plans.
the capability to put the the
Put 'em
wiring
later.
in the
Right.
future, but
That's
not
good.
at this time.
Right, so that we don't have to trench through our beautiful new pavement in the future. So we might actually end up, basically like in our business, once you start digging, the PVC conduit's cheap. So you might as well put a couple extras. So we're working with an electrician to kind of come up with the best course of action for that. And we might end up just with extra conduit in the ground, which I'm sure we'll use in the future at some point.
One other thing I was curious about is that, I mean, anybody that's been here, for a length of time, I mean, in and out of this building, especially in the evening, recognizes the lighting is inadequate in that parking lot. It has been for a long time. And this initiative was to account for that problem. But I'm not an engineer and I don't really know how you calculate the upgrade, but what is the upgrade of lighting that we should expect? I mean, more lights doesn't mean more lighting,
Right.
but what's gonna happen out there? I mean, there'll be more light poles, more lights, and they're shielded so they don't uplight.
Right.
But if you're walking around on the grounds, does it feel different than
It should,
out
it
there
should.
tonight?
They'll be in the four islands up in the main parking area where the handicap spots will be. Those will be taller poles for much larger throw to the light. Generally, when we're trying to have lighting designed, and we work with a consultant because it's not our expertise either. But generally, you're looking for uniformity of the light so that there's no hot spots that can cause excessive shadows or it kind of play with your eyes a little bit. So you look for uniformity as well as an average foot candle measurement of, for a parking lot, it's generally a half a foot candle. So most parking lots that you walk in, that's the average across the parking lot. Of course, there's hot spots underneath light poles and what have you, but that's what we kind of aim for. One of the things we noticed with the approved plan is the way the lighting was laid out. There were areas that overlay. So almost like we call it the Cumberland Farms approach, where it's just way too bright. So we're gonna probably pare it back a little bit. A lot of the decorative poles that you see that are a little lower, that are more pedestrian level, those will be retrofitted with new LED fixtures. And the benefit of that is we reuse the pole that's there, and they can, with LED technology the way it is, they can aim the light a little bit better with those retrofits. So you should certainly see what you're kind of used to at other parking lots.
Like where?
Really any shopping center, Big Y. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I imagine that they hit the half a foot to 1 foot candle average.
Big Y.
At Big Y.
Okay.
Any modern shopping development that's been done in the last 10 years, you probably hit that mark.
Bruce, you're talking about when you leave the building, it's so dark.
Oh, it is.
It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
really.
Right.
So that will be changed,
That'll be
close to the building as
Yeah.
well.
and it should be a little bit much more uniform across the whole parking lot as well. And we'll have extra conduit in there for cameras and whatnot, since it is a police station as well.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
I just had a couple questions. You said you're gonna start work this weekend, is that correct?
That's the intent, with a crew from DPW. There's, whether it's the approved plan or these changes, there's certainly work that's the same, that overlaps. And so they're gonna probably start with some of the tree removal and some of the drainage work where they can.
What's the timeline for completion?
We'll know that better in the spring once we line up paving contractors and whatnot. The big push for this one is basically all the pavement you see is gonna be removed, and then we're going to supplement the base that's underneath the pavement to adjust grades and there's some weak spots, we'll probably go full depth as well. So that effort's gonna take a little time scheduling with contractors in the spring. But the good thing is we have winter to kind of schedule that and try to hit the ground running once the weather's favorable.
comment? Anybody else have questions?
I don't have a question, but I would make a comment, is that as lovely as I think the brick sidewalks are, they really are very difficult for the aged and the handicapped. So I'm glad to see that regular sidewalks, that those who need a smooth surface will be much more walkable and easy for them to move around. So I think that's a good thing.
Should we make a motion to accept the changes that we've seen in the site plan?
What are we
This is site
accepting?
plan amendment.
You certainly can do that, so we brought, so it is, the staff considers this a minor change. And under your regulations, staff can make those approvals, but because of the changes that you had just seen recently, particularly with the change in entrance, we thought you at least, you should see that, so that you know what the intended changes are. We didn't want you going, we thought that the entrance was gonna be here and now it's here. So that's why we asked Adam to come
The
today.
reality, George, is our approval was so long ago, we don't even know what year it was.
Right.
Never mind what
I
the
think it was like-
details were.
2020.
It was 20, I think.
There's a time gap in there.
Winter-
Winter-
COVID.
winter
It
20.
sounds to me like it's something that if we made a vote to accept the changes that have been presented, that would be a good thing.
Sure.
Would somebody wanna make that motion?
I'll make that motion, that we approve the changes that were just described to us by
The town engineer.
deputy town engineer.
I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
we can start Saturday without somebody running up and saying,
Yeah. We can start with the lighting, that would be,
Yes.
understand this stuff.
At least start, yeah.
okay, last item in our agenda here is the discussion of the text amendment to the zoning regulations concerning mobile food vendors. We had, I think last time, except for Jackie, agreed that we thought it should be broadened so that any business could have a food truck. And I think at this point, there's been some pushback from the restaurants and
Mr. Chairman, just so you know that we received some letters today, some emails today, those are all at the desk. And I've also
Okay.
forwarded them all to you through 6 p.m. this evening, so if anything came after 6, you don't have it yet, I will make sure that those get in your Dropbox, but I did make copies of them and handed them out.
I think there's some amount of discussion that needs to take place and we didn't get feedback from the town attorney, did we?
We did get feedback from the town attorney on Mr. Bratz's question
Yeah.
related to constitutionality and limitations. The answer is, and staff agrees with this, is that it's well within your authority to limit how and why and where you select to place these. So the town attorney and the town planner would agree that you could limit food truck locations to, just like the previous draft was, to food and beverage only. It's within your authority to select the right places within the community for a use like this.
Okay, one of the things that occurred to me is that apartments, for example, if food trucks wanted to go to apartment complexes, that wouldn't be permitted under our either draft. Unless it was a special event.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's, I think so long as it's not open to the public, and that becomes quite a gray area, frankly, so I think if you wanted to have that discussion, we should add additional language.
And also I was thinking more about Ensign Bickford. I watched the guys walk from Ensign Bickford up to Fitzgerald's and Jersey Mike's.
Yeah.
And walk back, and I think we might have people who are interested in putting food trucks down at Ensign Bigma, for example, which would be permitted under one case and not on another, under another. And I don't know whether anybody's got any other comments about.
I mean, I've talked about this already, but it does seem like I personally think it's better to limit the who can use these food vendors and where they can go to places that were already selling food. We don't have a plan for what happens if people start driving into Ensign Bickford's parking lot because they wanna go to the food truck there. I've been kinda clear on that, so but yeah, I think it should be fine for an apartment building to have do a special event and have their the food truck day or whatever. Seems fine to me, and if that's already allowed within the previous draft language, that seems consistent to what I think should probably be the case. And in terms of it's only for the residents of the apartment complex, we're gonna be checking IDs. I mean, I'm sure that'll kind of work its way out, and if people have an issue, they can talk to the enforcement officers on it, but I don't see that as being a massive problem. But yeah, I mean, I've been of the opinion that what sells food should be able to continue to sell food with their food trucks, and where places that don't sell food shouldn't be using these food trucks except for their special, events or whatever.
And how about a business having a special event?
Wouldn't they go under the special events
You
then?
see,
Yeah,
Like-
what
they'd
we're
have to get
looking
a
at
permit.
is, pardon?
It would, that would be covered under that, it wouldn't allow a non-food and beverage
Right.
business to house on a permanent basis or an
Right.
ongoing basis, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
So is the plan to still we're still gonna have a public hearing in November?
Whenever we
Okay.
whenever we decide about the text
Okay.
that goes there, we don't have a timeline
Okay.
as far as
That's why.
Yeah, remember what you did last time, you withdrew that existing application, so now you're kind of back to deciding on language that you
Yeah.
wanna hold a public hearing on, and
I just wanted to point out, I mean, we've heard from the restaurants and we welcome their input, but there are other interests in town that may have something to say on this topic. So I wanna make sure that we also give them an opportunity to present their view to the commission.
That would be at the public hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so we already received comments from the public on the previous one, which would have said only restaurants. So now this way we'd be getting the public's opinion on the new version, which would be a more permissive thing, which great, I mean, that's more public input on two possibilities. We're not attached to either of those possibilities, correct?
you would.
we have to make a choice.
You know,
Right.
draft,
Just- So we have to choose either to limit it
Right.
to restaurants or not. Or it's an open thing, we can say, okay, let's allow food trucks on Thursday.
Right, but so I mean, we've received the public comment on one possibility. Could we then get the public comment on the other possibility and then just weigh those two as what we wanna do with the maximum amount of public comment and information available? Does it
It
work
doesn't
like that,
work
or
that
would we
way.
have to, because we
No.
withdrew it, it's no longer, we'd have to do it again with another period of public comment?
No, you need to have another public hearing for sure,
Sure.
absolutely, yeah,
Got that.
you must at this point.
Had a public hearing on the other one yet?
You did.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did.
You did, but at your last meeting, you agreed to withdraw
Okay.
that application. Remember, it's your application, it's no
Right,
one
right.
else's application, so you can do whatever you want, but you need to agree on language to
present to the public.
hold a public hearing on. And so either it is
The
language that
concern being, George, is that once we have the public hearing, we're limited in how much change we can make to the document before we have to start over.
Another public
with
hearing,
another
yeah.
public hearing.
typically the rule of thumb is you can become more restrictive, not less restrictive after the public hearing.
Oh. Yeah. Well then.
Okay, well, and I mean, I'll offer this, I'm sure we're not all waiting, bated breath. This fits my vision of what we need for regulation, the text. I have two concerns, one is, on page 3, there are under business permitted uses, B1, B2, B3, B1, ZP, what does ZP stand for?
That means zoning permit in your regulations. Zoning permit
Didn't have time
only,
to look at
not
that.
site plan.
Then the other thing is, remind me what the strategy is, that this doesn't apply to the town center. We can't put in that it applies to the town center code area. It's excluded.
The direction was to
Why would we
not
exclude?
allow it in the town center. The town center is more walkable,
Mhm.
right? And so it's more walkable venue, and so to have a use like this in a parking lot, I don't know.
They did it
I think we had some
Historical Society.
opposition from folks like the Main Street folks and other restaurateurs concerned about lots of things, but particularly the center zone. So that's kind of how we got there. We exempted,
There's
we
more
didn't include it in
restaurants
center zone.
In the center code.
Yeah, we didn't, and I think there's a strong argument to not, there's more restaurants in the center zone competing. It was your
I don't
direction,
remember
was
that
it?
being that as a foundational argument that led to this, but
Yeah.
I'm not objecting to it either.
Mhm.
I'm just, you know.
Yeah, it seems like the frustration is because within the commission, there is disagreement on how it should work. And then we come together for kind of a compromise, send it forward, people change their minds based on the public hearing, and now we're trying to
We don't
kind
have to
of.
compromise. All we need is 4 votes in favor of one approach.
Sure, but we'd
Yeah,
have,
we
4 of
can-
us would have to then agree on what that approach would be to send it forward to the public,
That's right,
That's correct.
which is the
Right.
challenge, I
so we
think.
need 4.
Yeah,
And so we could decide to do something with this tonight, or we could defer it. Is there a need, time-based need for us to complete this?
There is not, this is as a zoning commission application, the statutory timelines do not apply.
Correct.
I mean, you're up against, potential change in a commission, but there's no reason a new commission couldn't carry this forward.
Might be a good thing for them.
And and decide whether, they wanna address it or not.
yeah.
Those of you-
That's an option too.
Um,
See the reason for deferring it.
And I don't know if,
Remember, right now, you don't have an application, so you can
Yeah,
simply
we're talking about-
continue discussion on this matter at your next meeting, at another meeting, at a future meeting, or not at all.
well, I think we're faced with one situation where our friends up at the north end have been told they can't do something that their other locations are doing. That is bringing in Chick-fil-A once
Yeah, right now, it's not permissible under your
Right.
regulations.
so that would continue to be not permissible.
Correct.
As long as we're not taking the action.
Right.
I think no action is not the right course, to tell you, I mean, that's my
In the long run, but
Well,
I
and
think,
even in the short run, but my overriding concern isn't about food trucks. It's about every minute that we're spending on this, we could be talking about something important, more important to the town and to our future, which is affordable housing. We're really nowhere, as far as I know. And I know other people might be following this too, but our neighbors in Canton are hard at work on what they call a temporary, probably only a couple of year timeline on it, a regulation to compel a 15% affordable housing component to any building project over there above, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 units, anything above that. That's what they're considering right now.
Mhm.
And they had a televised public hearing on that last week. But they think it's compelling. They're at 8% of their housing meets the affordable housing definition, and these people think it's so important, they're working on it right now, and we're working on other things. I think we need to give some thoughts to our priorities before long. But there's other work for us to do. And going back to the food truck thing, every month or every 2 months, that's not really a
We
good
had
solution.
a prior text amendment and it was just thrown out in the last meeting, so we were going one direction. So now we're spending more time on it.
Well, I think that's not quite an accurate statement, because, we never had a vote
No,
on whether to submit that text as we discussed it to a public hearing. That was never voted.
Wait a minute, we did have a text that went to a public hearing, and we voted to do that. And then we withdrew it.
last week.
We couldn't get 4 votes. We could get 4 votes to withdraw, we got 6.
There weren't 4 votes.
6 to
in
withdraw.
support of that.
There weren't 4 votes in support of that draft,
Yeah.
That's why it's withdrawn.
to make it a regulation.
Right.
Right. And so now we're sitting and saying, what kind of changes would we agree on and send it to public hearing? And what we have in front of us is staff's attempt to take what we said and codify it.
And they hit the bullseye as far as reflecting
And
the
you think
discussion.
you're happy with it.
I'm satisfied that it's consistent with the discussion and the vote that we took at our last meeting. And at a public hearing, based on the input that we get, and the potential that we all have for, becoming more enlightened by public input, we could make a document like this, if we make this the topic of a public hearing. We can subsequently revise this to make it more restrictive.
Correct.
Where we run into trouble, as George has pointed out, if we want to make it more expensive. Then, so we create problems for ourselves if we start with something that's restrictive and then try to move in the other direction. We're just gonna have to redo
Okay,
some of.
do you wanna make a motion to that effect?
I would move that we submit the text as it's been presented to us and dated October 2nd. And move that for public hearing as soon as possible.
Okay, what about alternates for 12?
During your discussion, you were not, there was no consensus on what to do with the alcohol issue. So there's 3 12s essentially, no alcoholic beverages can be sold. Alcohol beverages can be sold if the owner of the primary use has a permit that would allow sale out of alcohol, and the third would be that it is consistent with the regulations that you can only sell alcohol if you get a bona fide special exception. So I mean, you can probably go to public hearing with those 3 as options if you wanted to, but there was no consensus on that particularly.
So we could use this document basically the way it's written.
I think you can, yes.
I guess when I was looking at it, could we look at each situation based on whether the truck operator has a liquor license and also whether the premises has a liquor license of some sort. Because the liquor license is associated with, the ones that we're familiar with in our town are familiar with locations. They're set by location, you can't move that permit, you have to go through the permitting process again if you're gonna change your location
There is a license
for food trucks.
that's floating,
And how does
there's a
it move
floating license.
on the back, in the truck or,
No, I mean, you can have a vendor who will come in and,
right, okay. So in those cases, as they have the thing annually over at Folly Farm for, there's a disability condition they do an annual fundraiser for, and there's tips, train bartenders and all that stuff.
They
They
get a
don't-
permit for the event.
Yeah, they have a permit. So
So remember, under 8.6, where you talk about alcoholic uses, it does say, no one shall serve or sell alcoholic beverages without a special exception. And if it's a change to that liquor permit, it has been your practice to approve a special exception or a new special exception or a revised special exception.
right, it's alternate, so
I think you can keep the 3
Alternate.
alternates and go to public hearing with the alternates.
go to public hearing with the alternate. People happy with that?
I'm okay with that.
So I
You
could
okay with it?
just add to the motion that I made to be specific that we're including the language as it's here in red ink and in black ink, this document for public hearing.
As a proposed regulation.
And again, just so everybody knows what we're doing here, as
Yeah.
that's the primary change from your last draft. Mobile food vendor uses shall be permitted within the following zones: B1, B2, B3, PO, I1, I2, and PAD, without limitation. That's what that language says.
But just to clarify, if at a public audience, that can be changed back to being more restrictive.
Correct.
'Cause I wanna make sure
Post
That-
public
that-
hearing, yes, you can
that
do
our
that.
restaurants are protected.
Yes,
I
you
think
can do
that's
that
really important.
after the public hearing, yes, you can make that revision.
Okay, further discussion?
This the earliest possible opportunity for a public hearing would be your single meeting in November, November 20th, because the text amendment, we need 30 days. So November 20th.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ann.
Oh.
You made the motion, Ann seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Carry 6-0. Okay? Any other commission business?
I just had one other thing, I can't remember how many meetings back it was, it could have been 2 months. You know, Tony articulated, I thought, a very thoughtful request that we get a written report from the town attorney. We'd like to have a face-to-face meeting with him in executive session to get an update and his insight on what's up with our litigation involving the Silverman,
Not so.
not Silverman.
Vessel.
Vessel project, right, which I now see the property is up for rent, but I don't know if that means anything. I'm just concerned that, you know, it's somehow, maybe we don't know the process, we don't know what he's doing, what the town attorney and his colleagues might be doing, and I think it would be helpful, although not consistent with past practice. So, is there a request pending action by the town attorney, George, or has he not been
No, we're
Request to-
in weekly communication and there's been more activity on the inland wetland suit than there has been on the planning commission or the zoning commission suit. In fact, I don't even think there's been a scheduling meeting yet on the zoning commission. But nonetheless, I will ask him whatever you want me to do, I can have him here and you can meet with him in executive session. I'll do whatever you want.
I think that would be
I
good.
would like,
If nothing's
Yeah.
happening.
I mean, if there's something to report, what's your pleasure?
it's very hard for me to understand the notion that there's nothing to report.
So
Litigation is
I
months
will
old and nothing to report.
I will ask him to come and you can meet with him in executive session and he can detail you where we are, where we've been and where we're going. How about that?
Thank you.
Sure.
We need a motion for
Do you-
that, or?
I don't think you do need a motion for
No,
that.
we're just asking staff.
No,
Do you have an update on the Silverman group?
We met we met with them last week to review their draft application. We expect it in the next week or so.
What about the existing? That's what I
Oh,
meant.
sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay, it's okay.
Sorry, I missed that.
It's alright.
There is activity out there. It's sporadic. There is activity. The trusses are on their way up. There was a crane out there today. But I will ask for a written formal update from them. I haven't gotten one in a couple of weeks.
Could you specifically with that update, could you ask specifically, there are residents' concerns of the existing building, so not just the building in front that we've been talking about. There are quite a few unfinished projects and residents are living there.
So punch list style stuff or
Yup.
more than, okay, yes.
There are manhole or drainage sticking out in various areas. There's just, the site is not finished. And if we could have a detailed update about when those things are being taken care of, who's gonna be on site, because they're collecting money and these things are not done.
I'll have an update.
Thanks.
Anything more?
Well, it's up in the air already, but if they're shortly submitting, Silverman, an application for something, is it fair to assume it's something similar to what they came here to tell us about a few months ago?
Very similar to your preliminary conversations with them, yes,
The one that we
virtually identical,
tried to discourage them from coming forward.
very similar is the answer.
Okay, motion to adjourn,
To adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
second? Okay. Tony moved and seconded, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, we're adjourned, thank you.